Hey Scoundrels, it's your man Clash here, coming to you first and foremost to say thank you so much. We hit our 1,000 subscriber goal last night, and I could not have been happier. It is 1,000,000% due to the feedback, support, guidance, and patience you've had with me over the last 7 months as I've started putting out content. Also, big thanks to my Patreons for the feedback they've been giving me and helping me put out things that are a little bit different, like this video right here, which is near and dear to my heart on theory crafting. Alright, so first things first, before we get into my process for theory crafting, I'll address the elephant in the room. I know it's challenging to theory craft in today's galaxy of heroes, given nesting characters and CG's willingness to rework characters they just rework. Looking at you, GG. But importantly, I think there are some steps that you can take to still push the game forward, and given all the ways that characters are being developed right now and new characters that we might be getting soon, like Watt, there are a lot of cool things that still can be done. So let's move into the fundamentals of theory crafting based on my opinion. I'm not going to get too deep into these, but these are my fundamentals for theory crafting. Some are obvious but often overlooked. Read the kits. There are so many things that I have come back to and found inside of just the words that are used in some of these really complicated kits that are out there. You have to read them and reread them and try to make sure you have a good understanding of what CG is hopefully saying inside of the language that they're using. Second, leverage others. No one person can be a repository for all of the information of this game, except for maybe you, Scuba. You know who you are. Third, categorize the unique features of each character, faction, leader that you can, because many of those things can be taken advantage of in other ways. We're going to get into that in just a moment. Fourth, test as much as you can. If you don't know the folks in your shard, arena shard, I suggest trying to find a way to get in touch with them, because a lot of times they're going to be the best way to potentially give you an opportunity to practice or try new and different compositions that you just can't do in other ways that don't provide a little bit of risk to you, like in Territory Wars or in Grand Arena. Alright, now these are my 5 things to remember when it comes to theory crafting, specifically PvP. There are many others that do PvE and raid theory crafting. I'm not good at that, but these are for PvP specifically. First, you need to know your immunities. They stand above the potency and tenacity check and oftentimes get overlooked. Second is know your faction synergies. There are some that are more complicated than others. I'm definitely looking at C-3PO's kit and thinking that is a complicated one given how many there are. Also know your faction-less synergies, the things that don't necessarily need to be faction-oriented that provide some sort of a mechanical synergy in the game. An easy example of that is Vader and his Zeta lead with Wampa. Fourth, is knowing where the weaknesses are. There are certain things that whole groups of characters do that are going to be very susceptible to certain things. An easy example of this that everyone probably knows is the Ewoks. They're really great against things like First Order, but they're horrible against things like Wampa and Ness because they just don't do enough damage to matter. Last is knowing how your mods can be affected inside of the theory crafting you're doing. I'm going to be going into a specific example of how I started to theory craft a counter to the Geonosians using Zeta Barris. And if you know the Zeta on Barris and you know her kit, you know that health is really important to the overall design of what she's trying to accomplish with everyone. So why don't we go ahead and now take a look at one of my newest examples of a theory craft and how I got there. Alright, so what you're seeing here is an example of a Geonosian counter that I've been working on over the last few days. It started with a couple of ideas that I had. First was that I knew there needs to be a persistent taunt to help effectively mitigate all of the crazy damage that they can do. And one of the ways that I could potentially do that was by exploiting the automatic taunt from Zalbar, but couple that with a Zeta Barris. So I tried to figure out a way I could reduce the damage of the Geonosians, but at the same time give myself a way to slowly either get more damage up over time on them or find a way to take advantage of dodge synergies, etc. So this first successful counter that you see here, I'm actually using Dengar Lead. Dengar Lead is great because he actually reduces the overall crit damage of the other team by half. Now, you know, Geonosians, they don't hit really hard in the first place, so when they start attacking this team, they're really not going to be doing a lot of damage, but they are going to be critting. And when Zeta Barris is on that team, the crits are going to be small, The healing is going to be big when you've got health modded appropriately across all these characters, and they're going to be getting the characters back to 100%. So as you watch this, by the time you see a character fall to less than 100% health, it's triggering Zalbar's automatic taunt and retribution, so he is consistently getting more and more attacks over the course of the battle, which is ramping up missions damage over time. That allows me to kill some of the more important characters. It allows me to daze Sunfax so it stops getting rid of the taunt, and it does a lot of the things that I need it to do overall. It also gives me the ability to keep stealth away from Spy whenever Dengar is not stealthed and he's not been dispelled and all that good stuff. Okay, so now what we've moved into is just a different version of this where we're using Zeta Barris as the leader. It's boosting the overall health of everyone. Same concept because it's giving Zalbar the auto taunt over and over and over, but it's just giving you a raw health pool that's much, much larger for the team to potentially survive some of the bigger hits from things like Spy and others. It does include a Newt Gunray as part of the team. I don't like that necessarily, and this is important to when you Theorycraft. It's not just can I kill a team with a bunch of random characters, it's how important are these characters to other comps that I'm either using or running, and does it make more sense to have them here or there? Newt, I would argue, is one of those that he's probably more important to be in other groups, and so this, while successful, maybe isn't the best variety of this as a counter. Okay, so now that you've seen that it can be successful, it worked a couple of ways, a good theory crafter never ends on where the one that they started with. You saw I started with a Stormtrooper Hanley, just trying to get the damage reduction there. Now I'm going to show you a version that's just a little bit different, and I'm going to be taking advantage of some of the same things. In fact, I'm going to be showing you how this whole thing evolves, and it's including the Zeta Vader with the Zalbar mission. I really was trying at first to get them to work with this well and still take advantage of the Xeris as the sort of mitigator of damage, and hopefully would allow them to just survive long enough to let the dots continue to roll and let their overall health pools continue to shrink. I'm showing you very many different versions of this because I want you to see just how many times I tested and iterated and swapped characters out, because that's part of one of those things I said was important, right? You have to test, you have to try new things, you have to ultimately get to a place where you really are understanding not just the concept, right? Not just the theory of the craft, but how does that theory craft actually play out in the game, in the turn order, and how are the mods affecting all that's going on right now. And so you'll see I started to actually move away from Mission and Zalbar, and I started to find some really cool things going on with Sith Marauder. I think people probably forgot that outside of the SE comp that he's on, Sith Empire comp, he has really, really good synergy with this because he's gaining damage from the dots. He is tanky as all get out because of all the buffs, and he, more importantly, is taking turn after turn after turn because all those out-of-turn attacks are going to be jacking up his turn meter, so you don't need a lot of speed on him. You just need offense, and he will start to chip away over and over and over at the team until ultimately we get to something that starts to look pretty successful and starts to give us more than just pause for, oh, this could work, but is actually something pretty neat. So I'm showing you the winning composition here is actually going to include a Wampa. It gives us enough damage from the Wampa, the Vader dots, and the Sith Marauder, but it also gives us enough survivability, and at least in this instance, with the Hermit Yoda and the Zeta Barris. Alright, I'm going to let you watch this play out so you can see how it was successful, but I want to emphasize one important point. If you see a video of something unique that's countering something, and it doesn't show you that same thing 3 or 4 or 5 times, I would put a red flag up on that because there are lots of ways that things can work once. It is much, much harder to get them to work many, many times, and so if you're not convinced that it has at least an 85 or 90% consistency rate from winning percentage, I would consider that just RNG's luck and not truly a good craft. So in this instance where you're seeing this video win, just know that you saw all those failed attempts going into this, and so one of those could have won, and I think several of them did, but none of them were consistent enough for me to show it to you until we got to this one right here. Okay, now what I'm going to show you, now that you've seen my process for getting to some unique counters to certain things like Geonosians, is take you through the next step that I think all good theory crafters do, is once you've found a way to take advantage of a weakness in a faction like I did with the Zeta Barris, I'm going to now try to find a way to keep myself from being exploited by such an occurrence. And so what I'm showing you is, while maybe well explored with Newt Gunray and his rework, it's not one that I think many have talked about too much after the Geonosians got their rework. And Newt Gunray definitely takes what I was trying to accomplish with Barris off the table, because the additional debuffs and the additional percent health reduction or percent health as damage from his Zeta is really powerful, and it can add up with all of those out of turn attacks. Even though I'm showing you some counters that really aren't effective if you have Newt or Poggle in there in general, I want you to see I went through many different variations and iterations to just kind of understand, okay, how is this going to affect my compositions? How is it going to affect others? So that way I know better how my enemies are going to experience this team on the other side. I know it's not going to be great for something like Barris, but I also want to know now, if it's not great for Barris, what are they going to try and attempt to take it down? That's not your quote meta like Revan, etc. So I've shown you several different comps to I tried to take this down with. The most disappointing is my fully Gear 13 6E modded prepared scoundrels. This was heartbreaking because these Geonosians have a Gear 11 and like no Gear 13 whatsoever. Super frustrating, but point is, you got to know where the weaknesses are, and you know sometimes what not to counter with it. And to that point, now we're going to get into what you want to do, as well as once you've found how to take something off the table, you still want to know, okay, now what is it going to take to beat that, right? It's now the third or fourth, we're doing inception levels here of theory crafting, but it's important that you also see what I've gone through to know what wins. I think everyone knows, of course, that Treya is going to obliterate this, but some of the other wins that I got, CLS actually did work. The CLS didn't even have a single Zeta. The revives from the Captain Han were really effective. EP still did a really great job because of all the rolling debuffs, and I think everyone kind of knows that one already. And then lastly, what I have here is a version of the Master Scoundrels where I was able to get it to work with young Han. So I hope this is helpful. There's a lot in here, I know, but more than anything, keep crafting, and if you haven't already, please hit the like and subscribe. Thank you so much.